Okay, so good morning, everybody. Welcome, everybody, on my second webinar for Hult Price India. This time, we are going to cover the change management aspects. Change management, which is, at least in my opinion, a crucial element of what you are going to do in a Hult Price competition, because the Hult Price, it's all about change, about the big changes. First of all, I would like to discuss with you what are the big mistakes that leads to the fact that most of the big changes or a lot of big changes usually fail. Also, I would like to discuss with you what are the ways to avoid these mistakes in the implementation process. My name is Kamil Torczewski. I'm from Poland. Currently, I am a CEO of the White Raven Academy, which is a leading training and consulting provider in Poland. We specialize in the improvement programs like Six Sigma, Lean, and we support a lot of big companies. I used to work with the big companies, big corporations, helping them to solve the process problems, quality problems. And I have also an experience while working with individuals on their changes related to some personal, not only business, but also personal issues. So that's how I have got an experience related to change management, change implementation, and I'm more than happy to share at least some of this experience with you today to help you in a better, let's say, to be better, to compete better in a Hult Price India challenge. We are going to talk about change, and the question for you is, what kind of change are we going to implement? And why is it important to talk about changes, and especially from the perspective of resistance to change? Because I think you are aware of this, but you have to remember all the time that every single change you are going to implement, even if it is a change for better, every time you will experience a resistance to change. Even if you are trying to help somebody to solve the problem, to improve somebody's life, the first reaction for the change you are going to implement, the first reaction will be resistance, sometimes will be rejection. And it is nothing unique, and you have to be prepared for this. A good example is, it's very natural actually, a good example of this is the fact that if some person has a serious health problem, which requires surgery and, for example, transplantation, and the doctors are, putting a new heart or the new liver inside the body, which is actually a lifesaver, the first reaction of the human body is always the same. It's a rejection. So resistance to change and rejection of changes, it's a very natural for every single person. And if you are trying to implement the big changes, even if the changes are for better, you can expect every time and always, you can expect resistance to change. And sometimes you can expect even very strong reaction, like a full rejection of the change you are going to implement. And it is also true for the Hult Price competition and the projects you are going to conduct. So the better you are prepared for this, the better you are prepared for dealing with this rejection, the higher chances that you will successfully implement your project and successfully implement the change. This is what I'm going to talk about today in about short 20 or 30 minutes, while covering the 8 typical mistakes that leads to the failure of big changes. And these mistakes are related mainly to the people resistance to change. But before we start, I would like to ask you to think about for a while and try to recall the change, the big change you were a part of, or maybe you were the leader of this change, but I would like to ask you to recall the change that resulted in complete failure. So think for a while and try to recall a big change, serious change that you try to undertake, you try to implement, and unfortunately the result was complete failure. So think for a while and please write it down. Write down what kind of change it was, and we'll come back to this at the end of this webinar. It could be that you tried to quit smoking and you were not successful. Or for example, you tried to change your diet, but you were not successful. Or you tried to build an excellent team, but you were not successful. I would like to encourage you also, while we will be talking about these 8 reasons why big changes fail, to look from time to time on this change, this failure. You have actually wrote down that some of these mistakes were made during implementing these changes that result in a failure. So think about this and try to look for these these mistakes in your personal experience. First of all, is allowing too much complacency, allowing too much comfort, allowing too much satisfaction. Every single change will always result in resistance. And the higher level of comfort, higher level of satisfaction from the current situation, the higher level of the resistance to change you will experience and you will have to face. So, change is always scary. For most of the people, even change for better is always scary. So that's why a lot of people quite often choose suffering over the change. Sometimes suffering is much easier, or for some people is better than readiness to change. So if you want to improve the level of acceptance for change you are trying to implement, if you are going to lower the resistance for change you are going to implement, you need to establish a sense of urgency. So first of all, what you need to do, you need to create what we call sometimes in English a burning platform, which means you need to create the conditions in which will be very hard to keep high level of comfort and high level of satisfaction from the current situation. So let me give you an example. If somebody is, addicted smoker, he or she exactly knows that, smoking is not very good, but, I like smoking, I like, connecting with people while smoking cigarettes, etc. And it's very difficult for me, if I am a smoker, to quit. But when there is a moment when I'm coming back from the doctor's office and keeping in my hands the results of the medical examination, with the which shows clearly that there is some kind of dangerous black spot on your lungs. The fear it creates, the urgency it creates, allows me to quit smoking sometimes from one day to another. So that's an example of how lowering this level of satisfaction, lowering the level of comfort, leads to or could lead to improving the acceptance for any change. As long as you are in a high level of comfort, high level of satisfaction from the current situation, your resistance to change will be much, much higher. So first of all, guys, when you are going to implement any change, you need to think and you need to look for the arguments which you can use to establish sense of urgency. What I mean, you need to look for some potential threats. What are the negative consequences if we do not implement this change? Or also, what are the opportunities which we can achieve while implementing this change? But staying in comfort, rationalizing the current situation will always result in a high level of resistance for change. The second problem when it comes to implementing changes is failing to build a substantial coalition. So it's very common that a lot of people think that the big changes could be implemented by a single person. And it's impossible. In the whole world history, you will never ever find, or you've never ever find any single big change which was successfully implemented by a single person. Even, I'm coming from a Christian culture, so even Jesus Christ, one of the first things he did was he started to create a coalition, the apostles. And this is true when it comes to changes in companies, when it comes to changes for human beings. If you want to implement a big change, you will need a coalition, you will need a strong coalition. And I do not mean only your team, because your team will be probably not enough. What you will need to look for, important people or important organizations that will support your initiative. The bigger the change you are going to implement, the stronger the coalition you will need. What kind of companies could support your effort? What kind of, let's say, even sometimes celebrities could support your effort? Which politicians or which influencers could support your effort? Who are the key people, the most influential people you need to be with you? Who are they? And how to convince them to support you? Because even if you are the best and brightest guys in the world, if you are acting alone, your change will definitely fail. You will need strong support, and then it means you will need a strong coalition supporting your initiative. This is the point number 2. Even if there is a sense of urgency, even if there is a strong coalition, we need to be sure what we are going to do and what is the final state, what is the future state we are going to achieve. If you are not satisfied with the current situation, if you have an urgency and if you have a coalition to make some change and you are missing the vision, everything what I mentioned before is not enough. The good vision, it is a vision which addresses both emotions and your rational part. So it has to be a clear goal, but also somehow related to your emotional side. Without a good and clear vision, even the strongest effort and the big support in implementing change probably will be not enough. So it's like when it comes to, for example, election to government, and there's a party that says, we are going to make some changes, we are going to improve your life, we are going to improve economy, we are going to improve transportation, etc., etc. But the key question is, what exactly are you going to do? What is the future state? Where we are going? What are you going to do? What is your vision? And saying that things like, we are going to make things better, it's not enough. And the same is when it comes to your projects, saying that, we improve something, it's not enough. You need to have very clear vision, and you have to be ready to answer the questions, where do you go? And what is the future state you are going to achieve? And especially for your team, it has to be clear. This is a very common case when it comes to big companies. The problem of failing to clearly communicate the vision. Even if the company has a vision or has a mission statement, very high-level goals, rules, principles, values, etc., they are very rarely representing good communication of these values, missions, goals, etc. What I mean, it's like this guy you can see on the screen now. It is like CEO who is saying, you guys need to treat people well because this is the value of our company. This is a principle in our company, and you are hearing this. But on the other hand, you can see that this guy is not treating his people very well. So the big problem is not only when it comes to big companies, but also when it comes to single human beings. Even if you have a vision, if you know what we are going to do, the problem is that people say one thing and unfortunately acting exactly opposite. So if I would like to, if you would ask me to give you some advice when it comes to communicating your vision, communicating what you are going to do as a Hult Price team, do everything to protect and to develop your integrity. What I mean by integrity, I mean that what you think equals with what you say and equals, most importantly, with what you do. And this is this all three, all together, all equal. This is real power of communication. It's not a big deal to say the beautiful words. It's not a big deal to make a beautiful presentation. It's not a big deal to send a beautiful email about your vision, about what you are going to do as a Hult Price students team. But it is a big deal to stay integral with what you think, what you say, and exactly what you do as a team. Think about it. The next serious problem when it comes to implementing changes is permitting roadblocks against the vision. What I mean? The situations when some roadblocks appear and you let these roadblocks cover or hide what's most important, your vision. You decided, you create a vision that you will be fit, you will be strong, you will be flexible, you will be healthy, and you decided to exercise daily, day by day. But unfortunately, there is a serious exam at the end of the week. And you say, this is something special. This is an obstacle. This is a very difficult situation. So I need to stop exercising. I need to start learning. So then after this exam, I will return to my daily routine. If you let any obstacle to cover your vision, even for a short period of time, then you can lose this vision forever. It's quite often the case with people who are trying to quit smoking, for example. They are not smoking for a couple of days, but unfortunately, something is happening, some kind of a roadblock, some kind of a, let's say, small car accident. So they get very nervous and they say, okay, this is a very special situation. That's why I need to take one cigarette. But after this, I'm coming back to my vision and I'm coming back to my daily routine. The truth is, unfortunately, if you let the obstacle stop you, even for a while, then you will lose your vision forever. So my advice in this moment is you have to continuously remove obstacles, and you cannot allow the obstacles stop you even for a while. Because if you let the obstacle to cover your vision even for a short period of time, then your vision, you won't be able to renew the vision with its power as a leading element for your team. Okay, so at one side, it's very important to have a long-term vision. You need to know exactly what you are going to do, what you are going to achieve in a long term. But on the other hand, having a long-term vision without short-term goals, it's not enough. Again, even if you have a sense of urgency and you feel that, okay, we need to act, even if you have strong coalition, even if you have a very good emotional vision, clear vision, what you are going to do, even if you are moving forward, but you do not plan, do not achieve a short-term goals, short-term wins, there is only a matter of time when you lose the energy, lose the momentum, and you stop. It's like, for example, if you are going to lose on weight and you are going to lose 20 kgs, it's a long-term vision. I'm going to, lose 20 kgs. I'm going to be fit and, and strong. And I am aware that it is a process that will last, for example, 6, 8, maybe 10 months. And that's fine. But I need to see on the, maybe not daily, but let's say weekly basis, some progress, even a little, but I need to see the progress. So that's why I am once per week taking the scale, making some measures, and checking if I am moving into the right direction. Without this, it's very difficult to keep momentum, keep the energy going, and moving toward the right direction. So my advice would be for you, you need to plan and you need to achieve your short-term goals. Even if you have a long-term vision, you know what is the future state, you will have to decompose this long-term vision into the short-term goals, and you need to do everything to achieve them, because this is the fuel for your team, this is a fuel for your project, and this is a fuel for you to, on the very difficult way to implementing a big change. Number 7, this is very tricky because you need to be very careful to not lose momentum after achieving a short-term goal. So these short-term goals could act in the two ways. One way, it gives you energy, but on the other side, they are points of risks. After passing them, after achieving these short-term goals, you are in danger of losing the momentum. Let me give you an example. It's like that. But imagine you've got 5 difficult exams to pass on your university. So you need to learn a lot, you need to train a lot. So you are preparing yourself to these 5 difficult exams. And the first exam is on the next week. You are working very hard. You are attending this exam and you are passing the exam with the excellent result. So you think, okay, I should take a short break. I should celebrate. I achieved my short-term goal. So have a party, have a day off, and then after this short, let's say, relax, I'm coming back to the process. And this short break, this short, this short stop could stop you forever. So my advice would be to do not stop after achieving the short-term goal. Maybe it's even better to say not to do not stop, but to even do not slow down, because the problem is that after achieving the short-term goals, we are quite often slowing down. We are happy to achieve some part of the final success, and there is a space for some, relax. We are losing the tension, we are losing the momentum, and that's a tricky point which can actually stop us on the way to implementing our big change. So do not slow down. And last problem, it is called not anchoring the changes in organizational culture. I'm sure you are familiar with Pareto rule 20/80, and you can apply also Pareto rule when it comes to big changes, and you can apply it in a following way. So we can say that to implement change, you will need like 20% of your effort. So 20% of the effort is required to implement change, but then 80% of the effort is required to keep this change, to make this change last. So again, let me give an example when it comes to smoking. It's not very difficult to quit smoking. One colleague of mine told me once, Kamil, quitting smoking is very easy. I've done it at least 5 times. But the problem is to make it a long term. So to make it a long term, you need to think about it, and you need to think how to support the change in a long term by communication, by showing the results, but promoting particular people, but again explaining the benefits. And sometimes you will need to create some supporting structures to make the change last in a long term. If you do not take care about it, if you do not address this, your all effort related to implementing this change can be lost in a minute, just because you left the change to stay alone, let's say. These 8 problems of implementing changes, they exist not only when it comes to implementing big changes in organizations, in societies, in teams. They also exist when it comes to implementing changes on the level of single human being, and these 8 mistakes are very universal and very common. On the very beginning of our webinar, when I ask you to recall the big change, and now I'm asking you to think about which of these 8 mistakes were made in this particular example, and I am sure that at least one, and there is a very high probability, even more than one of these mistakes were made during this change. Let me give you some, let's say, homework. Think for a while, and then answer the following questions. The first one, what kind of change are you going to implement? Are you aware that what you are going to do with your project is actually about making a change? So do you know what kind of change are you going to implement? Second, think about it, how to establish a sense of urgency for the change. Why is it important? It is very important because the higher sense of urgency in the environment you are going to implement the change, the lower resistance for the change. So think how to establish sense of urgency. You can show some trends, you can show some data, you can show some examples, you can show some benchmarks, you can talk about tricks, you can talk about potential benefits, but you will need to establish a sense of urgency. How to do this? Think about it. And next, do you have an idea who are the key people or key organizations you will need to join you in your coalition to implement the change successfully? Remember, you will not able to do this alone. Every single change, big change in the history of the world were conducted by the coalition and supported by the coalition. The next point, what is your vision? What are you going to do? What will be the world after, implementing your project? So what's your vision, guys? And remember, you will need a vision which addresses both the heart and the brain. It has to be both rational and emotional. The next point, think about it. How are you going to communicate this vision? What are you going to do to make this vision clear for your team, for your environment in which your team is acting, and for the people who will be addressed by the change? So how to communicate what you are going to do. And remember, please, the communication is not only what you say. The communication is full integrity of what do you think, what do you do, and what do you say. And the last point, what are the short-term goals you are going to achieve and when? Guys, you need to plan this. You need to plan this goal and you need to do everything to achieve these short-term goals. And then if you are achieving them, please do not slow down. I wish you all the best. Greetings from Poland. Keep my fingers crossed for your projects and all the best for you.